Hey everybody, welcome to today's live stream. We're going to be live coding an email like we've been doing the last couple of months. Working on the same email, which is a receipt email, but this time we're going to be looking at how to optimize it for dark mode, which should be pretty fun. As always, I'm Jason Rodriguez. I work at Litmus. I'm the community and product evangelist, which means I spend almost all of my time teaching others how to do email marketing better. So that can involve copywriting strategy, design, coding, all of that kind of stuff. So today we're going to be talking about coding and a little bit of design. Um, Thanks so much. If you haven't been here before, you haven't subscribed already, feel free to subscribe to the Litmus YouTube channel. We do things like this on a pretty regular basis. Every month we have kind of like practical hands-on session, which is usually the second Friday of the month. Last Friday, we actually had a company-wide wellness day, so we all headed off to do something that brings us joy. I reorganized my guitar effects pedal board, which brought me great joy because that hasn't happened in a long time. So that's why we're doing it today on Monday. And it's kind of fun to kickstart the week thinking about some cool new coding techniques and how we can, make our emails a little bit better. So thanks for joining me. Again, subscribe, that'd be awesome. There is the chat, which you will see on YouTube. I'm in there. Keep an eye on that. Anytime you see me look over here, that's because I'm checking out the chat. Feel free to ask any questions there. I would love to hear them. Anything you want to know about dark mode, email design, coding, all the stuff that we're going to talk about today, that's the best place to do it. And I will try to answer those questions. So I guess let's dig in here to dark mode. I'm going to switch my screen over here. So you should see my screen, which is Chrome, open to Limus Builder, which if you're not familiar, it's our dedicated code editor, visual editor for email developers, designers, marketers, copywriters, all that good stuff inside of Litmus. Um, I'm working in the code view here since we are going to be doing some coding. If I wanted to update some of the content here, I could pop open Visual Editor, which we introduced fairly recently. Great way to kind of quickly edit your campaigns and make campaign creation a little bit more accessible to people that might not be familiar with email code and all the little quirks and inconsistencies across email clients. Um, but for today, we're going to be looking at the code since we're going to be actually writing a little bit of code to adjust our email for dark mode clients. Um, but this is the email that we've been working on over the last couple of months. It's pretty straightforward receipt email, nothing too complicated going on. It has a logo, has a little bit of copy, it has this table. We kind of built this out using this hybrid coding approach, which is all about, using flexible containers, fluid containers that have a max width applied to them so that it doesn't take up the entire width of this screen on a larger screen and make all of that copy unreadable. But then it kind of shrinks down on mobile, which is awesome. Last month we looked at troubleshooting a couple of issues, primarily around how buttons look, how padding was spaced out in our email, how this table was looking, specifically in Outlook clients. So we got that working pretty well across most email clients, which is great. So everything is rendering pretty well. There's still a couple of little things if we look at, some versions of Outlook, we lose these rounded corners on our table or on our buttons, but that's not really a big deal. So again, not too worried about that one. But today we're going to be looking at dark mode and how this email renders in different dark mode clients or clients that support dark mode or versions of dark mode. We're going to look at I guess how email clients, the different levels of support for dark mode, because there are a couple of kind of key tiers of dark mode support that are good to understand. And then we're going to look at both from a visual design perspective, how we can do a couple of little things to make our email look better in dark mode, and then look at the actual code to, enable a better experience for email clients that do support CSS and using your code to adjust the look of your email in dark mode. So I did see that somebody was asking about, how can I stop light text from turning dark on top of a dark background color in dark mode in the Gmail app for iOS? So that's interesting. So we might need to look at Gmail for iOS and see if they're doing anything funky there. But really, what we're going to do is, yeah, just dig into the code, dig into the design. I guess the first thing I'm going to do is just kind of choose my clients here that I want to test in because I don't really need to look at, everything because we're just focusing on dark mode today. I'm going to keep Apple Mail 13 selected, which is light mode, just so we kind of have like a default, like this is what the email looks like. But I want to test in Apple Mail 13 dark mode here. Let's see what other dark modes we have. We'll look at Outlook for Office 365, their dark mode. We can go down to mobile here and see. See, we got iPhone 11 Pro in dark mode. We can check out the iPad. This generation 7 of the iPad in dark mode. We can check out. My hunch is that both of these will render pretty identically because they're both using the Apple Mail app, which is more what controls the rendering as opposed to the actual devices themselves. Um, I'm not worried about, web clients necessarily, because they largely take on the behavior of your operating system. But this will be good to kind of start to see what those emails are looking like in dark mode. I'm going to save those and, let Litmus do its thing and render those previews out if we aren't already there, and start looking at them. So we have Apple Mail 13, which is the default light experience, which is exactly what we see when we look at it in like the web browser view, when we're actually coding it inside a builder. So nothing fancy going on. The next one is Apple Mail, same version, but in dark mode. So you can see right off the bat that this is still rendering the light version of the email. So I'll talk about in a second why that happens to be the case. Even though we're in dark mode, it's still showing the light version of the email here. Let's see, this is Outlook for Office 365, their dark mode. So you can see that this is displaying in dark mode, but this is kind of like a superimposed version of dark mode, I guess I would say. They kind of forced on us. It's not really us controlling the experience. We'll look at how we can do that. One of the main things that kind of jumps out to me though is this bottom logo here for our little blobby blobs kind of fake company that we created for this email. It's a dark logo and it's almost all you see is that plus sign down here. Don't see the actual like blobs themselves. So I'll look at a kind of visual design technique that will adapt our logos a little bit to make it more visible here. What else we got here? iPad, Apple Mail dark mode again is showing the light version of the email. So we'll see if we can fix that. And the same on the iPhone 11 Pro in dark mode and Apple Mail showing the light version. Um, so really what we're gonna do is figure out how we can get these email clients showing a dark mode version of our email. We'll look at some of the CSS, some of the HTML we can use to target different elements and make them look better, like how we want them to look in dark mode. We'll talk a little bit about levels of support for why, Outlook is showing this when I haven't done anything to my code to enable dark mode, and then see if we can get these mobile clients working as well. So I guess the first thing I want to tackle is actually not code related, but it's related to this image down here, which again is this logo. It's the dark version of this blobby logo we have up here. But since that black logo and it's on this dark background, you can't really tell that it's even there, other than this plus sign. It doesn't really go along with our brand. We want to keep our emails on brand. I'm sure there's some blobby blobs brand guidelines floating around on Google Drive that I might want to pay attention to. So the first thing we're going to do is not code related. It's going to be like a visual design thing. And I'm going to be referencing kind of throughout two resources that we put together at Litmus that are great resources for anybody that needs to wrap their head around dark mode and how to make their emails work better on dark mode. The first one is a blog post, which I will put the link in chat here. if everybody wants to follow along there. This is from Alice Lee, who for a long time was one of the email developers at Litmus. She has since moved on to Squarespace, where she's doing some awesome work with Squarespace and their email marketing platform that they've been building out over the past couple of years. But she's one of the smartest people I know in the industry. Amazing coder, knows her way around email more than pretty much anybody. And she's done a lot of awesome research into dark mode. She released this blog post, The Ultimate Guide to Dark Mode for Email Marketers. And we've kind of kept this updated since she's left. We updated it pretty recently to take into consideration some more recent developments in dark mode. But it kind of goes over everything you need to know about dark mode, the different levels of support, different coding techniques, all that stuff. More recently, we've released that as an ebook, kind of revise some of that information, which again, I'll dump this link into the live code chat. Feel free to check that out. So you can download the PDF for free. It's good to keep kind of handy on your desktop. Keep it open to reference when you're building out dark mode emails. It goes through a lot of the same information, a little bit more updated, a little bit more current, and a little bit easier to consume in the PDF version as opposed to the blog post. But the first thing that Alice kind of lays out and the ebook lays out are these three kind of different levels of support for dark mode. Um, and they kind of break down into an email client not really doing anything at all. So your email will display, like the intended light version. It doesn't make any attempt to dark modify your email, for lack of a better word. So what you see when you're building out your email, if you're just in that light version, that's what you're going to see in most email clients. So if we were to pop open, let's say, I don't know, like Outlook 2013, save that. Once it loads, you can see they're not really doing anything to our email to make it work in dark mode. And most email clients kind of default to that experience where it's just what the email is. They're not going out of their way to support dark mode or try to adjust it to make it look good when people are viewing in dark mode. The kind of next level up is email clients like Outlook.com that does what we typically refer to as a partial color invert. So they're going to take their own stab at making your email work in dark mode by adapting the colors, and that's kind of what we see here. When we look at Outlook Office 365, I don't think I have another dark mode in here available right now. It might be down, but they're essentially inverting the colors of your email without you like changing those colors on your own through CSS. So it's their attempt to make this look good in dark mode. For the most part, they do a pretty good job of it. You can see this is an example in the blog post of one of the Litmus newsletters. It looks pretty good on dark mode. All the text is readable, the images are there, the buttons look like buttons still. But it's not exactly on brand anymore for Litmus. So you can see this banner up top here. In the light mode version, it's this like light yellow color. It kind of makes this weird like orangey brown that doesn't look that great. It's definitely not in our style guide as a company. And these buttons could be a little bit higher contrast against the background here. But we don't really have a lot of control for this kind of second tier of support for dark mode. The kind of some of those clients too to do more of this like full color invert where they go even farther, and you can see like this higher contrast CTA down here, which is nice, but again, not exactly on brand for your company, and doesn't really give you a lot of control over what your email looks like, because you aren't controlling any of it. It's what that email client is trying to do to your email to make it look okay and usable in dark mode and not blind the reader, with that light mode email when they're in an entirely dark interface. The kind of like highest level of support for dark mode is when you can actually adjust and pick how your email looks in dark mode for certain email clients, and that's by using code to enable better dark mode experience and you actually dictating what it looks like through CSS. So there's this good little support chart here that goes into dark mode support. This is last updated July 2020. I don't know of any like major things that have changed since then, although things could have changed since then. But this is pretty good little support chart here that'll give you an idea of like what works where. So really Apple Mail, both on Mac OS and iOS, so their mobile devices, their desktop or laptop devices, they have the best support for dark mode and for you kind of custom coding that dark mode experience. So we can use, we'll look at this app media property and how we can use that to make sure our styles are applied to the email client. But this gives you, Apple Mail, iPhone, and then Hey.com, which is a newer email service from the folks at Basecamp. Those are kind of like the three best experiences in email clients right now, where you can fully control what your email looks like for those dark mode users. Outlook.com, most of the Outlooks, they kind of do that second level of support, that kind of partial invert, where you don't really have a lot of control over what will work and what you can adjust in your email for those dark mode users. Similar for this Gmail app down here, it will attempt to make your email look good for dark mode users, but you don't have any control over it. So I did see that, that question in the chat earlier about how can I, you know, make my email look better for the Gmail app. Bad news is you don't really have much control over it. They will do their thing and try to make it usable for dark mode users, but you can't really use CSS or HTML to optimize that, which is unfortunate. So hopefully we'll see some updates, over the next year or two for some of these email clients, for more email clients to enable better dark mode experiences. But really, the things we're going to look at are, Outlook. It does its own invert. So what can we do for our email to make sure like it still looks good when they do that automated swapping or that invert of colors? And then we'll look at for Apple Mail and Hey.com, if we were to test this in Hey.com, how can we use HTML and CSS to make sure our emails look really good? We have, I'm going to get rid of that. Outlook 2013. It's going to bug me that it's there. And just focus on, the Apple Mails, the Outlook, and see what we can do here. So again, full light mode version. We're gonna have to figure out how to get that working in Apple Mail on, Mac OS, that is in dark mode, and then this partial invert from Outlook for Office 365. So again, the first thing we're going to look at is this visual design element down here. Most of the stuff is really good. It's readable. The text is high enough contrast. The buttons are high contrast, so I'm not too worried about that partial invert. Our email's pretty nice and accessible and high contrast right now. But this logo down here is bugging me because you can't really tell what it is. So one of the visual design tricks that we've been using at Litmus when we are worried about like the Litmus logo in particular for our emails being displayed on a dark background. It's this color wheel up here that you're probably used to seeing. It doesn't really work well on dark backgrounds. So we have started, taking some of those logos and considering what it looks like on a dark background and seeing if there's a way to make it work better for our subscribers so that we're not, hurting our brand in any kind of unintentional way. And the best way to do that is to add like a stroke or some sort of like glow around that logo, so that when it is displayed on that dark version of the email, you can still recognize it as that logo. So kind of a less than ideal example here is if I switched the background color of this frame here. I'm inside of Figma right now. I have this mock-up that the email was based on. But you can see when we switch the background to dark, we're not really doing anything on the text up here, but our logo down here doesn't really work that well. So just for inside of your visual design editor, one of the things you can do is when you're exporting those assets, any assets that will be in your email and might be displayed on a dark background, is to give an outline or a glow to those elements. So I have this kind of blobby, these three blobs that are combined to create that kind of logo. Since it's all black here, I'm gonna use this union tool to make it one shape. And then two things I could do inside of Figma, inside of Photoshop, Illustrator, whatever you happen to be using, they all have similar kind of tool sets. Um, I could add, drop shadow or, some sort of shadow that is using, white to create some sort of effect around it. I'm gonna reduce the Y here. And add the blur. The opacity is really low, so you can't really see it that well. So I could do something like that, where in dark mode, you still can see that logo. It has this kind of cool glow effect to it. Might work well for your brand. On Litmus logos, we do something similar. It's like a much smaller little like glow area, smaller spread on it. For this brand though, it's kind of like clean, straightforward. Brand that I don't think the glow works as well, so I'm just going to add a stroke to it. So I'm going to outline that image. Oops, that is not what I want to do. So we have the stroke here. It's outlined in white. I might make that a little bit thicker, just for making it a little bit more visible. So that looks kind of cool. I like that as like the visual element for that logo down there. And then all I need to do then is take this and export it. I'm going to export the logo there. I'll just put it somewhere in here. Let's call it logo bottom. And then when I go back into Builder, or wherever you're kind of building your emails, I can grab that logo, drag it in here. It'll be available in there. And then go down to my code where that image is. Is right here, this logo, HBW. I'm gonna change that to bottom. And then save that, and that'll trigger the rerun of my email here. And you can see we have this much more visible logo element down here. And that works too, again, in these other clients as we're gonna start building these out. The nice thing is on like a white background, you don't see that stroke. It's not visible here, even though that's the same image. But then when you are in dark mode for clients like this, that logo is a little bit more visible. You're on brand. It's awesome. Something else you should kind of pay attention to is, other types of images that are inside of your email, and just kind of how you crop those images, whether or not you use JPEGs or PNGs for those files to make sure that those images display in the best way. It looks good. It looks intentional for your email, even when it's in these dark mode experiences that you don't typically control. So there's a good GIF in this blog post that kind of shows that example. We have this kind of customer testimonial from Molly over at Trendline Interactive, and you can see when we're switching these, we have it cropped two ways. One is like cropping directly around that circle, and it doesn't look very like intentional. It doesn't have like breathing room around that image. So the second way is make that image a little bit bigger, adding some additional white space around that circular element and cropping it so that it looks good. It looks a little bit more intentional, even when that image is displayed in dark mode. The other thing you can do though is just use transparent PNGs, so that this is like a JPEG down here. So it will have the background color in there. You can't really do transparency in JPEGs that email clients will support, but PNG files support transparency. So you could export this without that background color around the image, and when you do that swapping, then you get a nice, much better experience. And then you can see too this Litmus logo, how we do this little glow around the text of our logo, so that it's still visible and people can read it as Litmus and it just doesn't look awkward. So that's kind of like the main thing is making sure that you're accounting for those images from a visual design perspective in your email campaign so that your emails remain on brand, all the images look intentional and well designed, even if you don't have full control over what that looks like. So beyond that, how do we use code, use HTML and CSS to make sure that our emails look good in dark mode clients? More importantly, for this example here in Apple Mail, how do we get the dark mode version actually working in Apple Mail on when it's switched over to dark mode at the OS level? Because it's not right now, it's not working. So there's a couple of different things you need to essentially enable inside of your HTML to get that working. So if we go back in our blog posts, again, I'm going to be drawing heavily from here. I'm going to pull this code in here and put it in our email, and then I'll explain what's going on. So I'm gonna just drop it in here. These are meta tags that will live up inside um, the head of your email. I'm gonna put a comment that just says enable dark mode. Then drop those two tags in there. So what this is doing, these two meta tags are essentially telling email clients, web browsers, anything that supports and like understands these meta tags that we have two different modes available for our email campaign. So this color scheme one works for some email clients, some web browsers, and the supported color schemes is kind of an alternative that for other email clients, other web browsers. But you can see that the content here, this content attribute is set to both light and dark. So this is effectively saying, hey, rendering engine, I have both a light version and dark version of our email. Display which one based on that subscriber's preference. So I'm going to save that and see if that toggles the triggering here inside of Apple Mail. So boom, you can see that we now have a dark mode email working inside of Apple Mail. So again, our light mode version, since we're saying, hey, this is a light version of an email, it is supported. That's kind of the default version. That's what's displayed there. But then if the user has dark mode enabled at the OS level, then Apple Mail is smart enough to say, look at our HTML, see whether or not this attribute is set to dark as well. And if it is, then it will switch over to dark mode. But you can see it doesn't look that great because we haven't done anything through CSS to make sure that the email looks good in that email client. So that's why the kind of next step is to make sure that we're using CSS to make this all work well and be readable and usable for those subscribers. If we were to leave, again, if we were to leave these meta tags out, or if we just had light set, then that's kind of the default mode. And that's what we saw before, which even in dark mode, it defaults to that light version of the email. But we're saying there's two modes here. Display the proper one based on that subscriber's preferences. And then within that, we're going to be using CSS to make our content look better, but targeting certain elements in our HTML and then adapting them using CSS. So this all happens inside of CSS, which for the most part in email, you're either going to be writing your CSS as an embedded style sheet using a style tag on the head of your email, or as inline styles on the specific HTML elements. So all of our kind of like default styles, again, are set inline on these elements, just so they work across the widest range of email clients. But then really anything we're kind of like overriding is what happens inside of this embedded style sheet. So for, when we were building this email out originally, which you can see, just look through the live stream category on our YouTube channel to find the older versions of this to see as we were building out the original HTML and CSS, as we were making that responsive. We have this media query up here that controls some responsive stuff, which this is using, that hybrid fluid approach. So nothing fancy going on. It's just that adjusting the text size of our copy, so it's a little bit more readable on mobile. We're going to drop down and put in another media query that will enable us to adjust our styles on dark mode versions. So I like commenting things out here again to make sure that I know what each of these little snippets of code do. So I'm just going to say dark mode styles and then copy this media query over. So media query is kind of like a logical switch within CSS that allows you to provide some like criteria and say, when this condition is true, I want to, write some CSS and have this CSS applied to all my HTML elements or like whatever you happen to be targeting. Um, Jake, I'm happy to do this. Thanks. I saw your comment. Thank God you're doing this. I needed this. I'm happy to help. I'm glad that this is giving you some insight into dark mode. So we have app media, and the value that we're using here, this kind of like logical switch, is this prefers color scheme value. And when that's set to dark, then we're saying, anytime a user prefers the dark color scheme, apply these CSS styles instead. And so that's really all we're doing is setting up that condition, and then we're going to be targeting different elements down here to adapt our dark mode. So it's really kind of just setting that there and then going through your HTML, your CSS, all of these elements and figuring out what you need to change. So the first thing that sticks out to me is obviously this black text here. You can't read it at all unless you have like the world's most amazing vision, which I absolutely do not. I should probably be wearing my glasses right now, but and, you know how that goes. Um, so we're going to adjust this and figure out where that style is set and then fix it. So for this email, we're kind of setting all of that default, those styles on this div, this container div of where the rest of our content lives. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to target this. I'm going to give it a class. We'll just call this container. I don't think I'm using that class anywhere else. And then you can see that we have an inline style of this black color for our copy, which is determining that. So that's what we want to override. So up in our dark mode media query, we can say .container, which will target that class right there, and say color is equal to, let's do white for right now and see what that looks like. Since we are overriding the inline style, we need to set that to important to make sure that that value kind of takes precedent. And I'm going to save that and we'll see if this works. Fingers crossed. I didn't get anything wrong. Cool, it does work, awesome. So you can see that we have our white copy here, which is exactly what we wanted, nice and readable, high contrast. But one of the things I didn't account for was that's also, that div is controlling the color of our table color as well. So since we have this like lighter background for the table that is pulled in from, it's this like really light bluish gray, and that kind of copies over here. We're going to have to target that as well. So we can go down in our table here and say, we have this background color set. We're not overriding that color at all. So two ways we could do this is we could either target that in the, the media query up here for dark mode, or since we kind of want that to be the table style for all of our email clients, like that's what it looks like. It's that light gray. That'll still like look relatively good in dark mode. We could set that just on this element in general and just say, we hop into here and say color is equal to black. Save that, we'll rerun, and then that should give us the look that we're going for. If I wanted to change how this table looks specifically for dark mode, then I could do that in the exact same way. I could, this table has this class full text. I could add another, class here of table and say, I did not close this out. Bad coding. So table has a background color. We're going to override for. I'm just guessing at values here. We'll give it like a dark gray that's like lighter than the background here. So I'm going to guess like, I don't know, like 888 is a kind of darkish gray color. And I can also say, I want the color to be white again, or I could just override that other, take away that inline style that we put in there before. And then save that, and then again, it should work. Apple Mail. I think my live streaming is making this go a little bit slower. Cool. So I mean, it's not the greatest design there. I could pull, these kind of colors from. I might pull in. I think something that might look cool is that like blue color of the buttons might look cool here. So I'm gonna pull that color in there and see what this looks like with a white text on there. It looks similar to the button, but I think it's pretty obvious that it's a table. That looks kind of cool. I like that. So yeah, you can just adjust that kind of based on your overall like style guide, your brand colors, all of that. And that's really what it is when you're targeting these different, this highest tier of dark mode support, which is really just the Apple mails because Apple's email clients are superb for all intents and purposes. As far as like HTML and CSS support goes, they do a really good job of supporting the latest and the greatest and everything we need as email marketers, from interactivity to dark mode, responsive stuff, all of that. So you could very easily go through here and just kind of update what you need to for your email. And it's really, again, just targeting different HTML elements, dumping those kind of override styles in this media query that says prefers color scheme dark, and making it look good across all these different email clients, or, for the subscribers that are using these email clients that support this. Let's pop open. You can see that in Outlook Office 365, none of these styles, again, are affecting the display of our email, and that's because it's doing its own color invert. We don't have control over that, so that's why we need to just make sure our images look good when it's switched over here. One thing to kind of know, we look at this on mobile too. Apple Mail supports all this stuff, so it's like the exact same desktop experience, except it's shrunken down for that device size. You can kind of see what this would look like on a device. Looks cool. It's not going to be like a jarring experience for anybody in dark mode, which is really what you're going for. That's kind of like the goal is you don't want somebody to be in a dark interface and then they open up your email and it's just blinding them. It's so bright, especially like at night or something. If somebody's reading and it's just a very jarring experience. And our goal as email marketers is again to make that subscriber experience as good as possible. So when you do that, then you're just gonna annoy and piss off your subscribers, which is not what you want to happen. A couple of kind of caveats to this though is that one, it doesn't work everywhere. There's something you might have to do for the Outlook app, where they kind of prefix. They will add in this attribute, this data-ogsc for your elements, so that when you open up that email, it won't like read your classes that you happen to be using. So one way to get around that is to prefix your CSS with that, and kind of like double up on this. So I could have that. I could double this up, and then I can just prefix it with that data.ogsc. And then Outlook, the app on Android at least, should pick up those styles. Just one of those weird little like quirks you kind of need to know about. Um, and that's one of those things too, like who's to say how long that will be the case? Because email client providers make updates and change things like that a lot of times. Usually they do that for, the sake of security or making sure that your CSS doesn't override, some styles in their interface or anything like that. So a lot of email clients will like prefix or like change your code and your classes and things like that, or add their own, and that could mess up, a lot of different things in email. So it's just kind of being aware of that. The other thing you could do is swap out content. So I'm trying to find a good example of where that is in this email here. Could have sworn Alice wrote about this a little bit. Maybe not. So what you could do is, like, if you want to maybe change out this logo, is a good example of where this might happen, is to swap that content out for dark mode clients. And the way you do that is, I'm trying to find, I don't have the code like memorized off the top of my head. I do think I have this open in preview though, which I can't remember if it went into this. Again, this is the ebook that kind of goes into all of that stuff. Yeah, so if we wanted to swap this out, pretty like simple mechanic here is to have like two images in your code and then change like the display values of those. So we could probably do this relatively easily. Let me think about it. So we have our image up here. We're using this outdated center HTML tag here, which still works in email clients, great way to center logos and stuff like that. So what we could do is drop this down and duplicate this image. And I think we call this image bottom.png. I'm going to go back into my browser preview here. So we can see these two images kind of side by side. If we were to, we can take that one out, and then we have this black image with it, which has that white border around it. And what we're going to do is swap these out based on, dark mode versus light mode versions. So we're going to add, the default experience for most email clients is the light version. So we wouldn't want this dark version logo to be showing by default. And we can kind of, kill it in here by saying display equals none. And then it takes it out of rendering on that page, but it's still here inside the HTML, which means we can still target it inside of our CSS and make that display in dark mode clients using this media query. We want to call this something so that we can, target it again. So we'll give it a class of like dark image. And similarly, since we're going to be hiding this, we want to target that. So we'll call that light image. Really, you can name this kind of stuff anything you want. And then inside of our media query for dark mode, we can say, dot light image display. We want to display none on that one since we're going to be hiding that. We're going to be overriding any default values, so include import in there. And then kind of just reverse that. So dark image, we're going to say display equals block important, which will switch from none to block to make that work. So we're in light mode here. It's not going to change anything. But then if we go in our email previews, wait for them to load here with the live stream going, which really takes a little bit longer than usual. And go in here and say, that's light version, that's the dark version, and it's pulling in, it's swapping out that content, which is awesome. I did notice that it's displaying both of these in Outlook, so there's probably some weird little thing I would have to figure out and fix for that, but not a huge issue right now since we're just playing around with this. But that's kind of the basic mechanics. You would just have two elements in your HTML, so these two images for our case, That could be, a div of text, a banner, whatever that happens to be. But I would say for kind of accessibility's sake, you don't really want to like hide a lot of things based on different devices and stuff like that, other than largely kind of cosmetic stuff. Because the kind of thing is you want anything you want one subscriber to see for the most part. You want all of your subscribers to see. So if you're hiding like large blocks of copy based on like whether or not somebody's viewing in dark mode, that could be like a really weird experience. Or somebody might be opening it in one situation and they're meant to see that copy but they don't for whatever reason. You don't want to run into any of those weird kind of issues, so just be careful about what you're showing, what you're hiding for those different email clients, for those different kind of reading environments. That kind of trick, that kind of showing and hiding of content can be good for like mobile versus desktop if you're displaying something like a banner to like download your app on the App Store, or click to call if you're on a phone, whereas on desktop you can't really click to call. So that can be useful there, but just kind of keep an eye on it. Again, for some email clients, like it looks like Outlook Office 365, that display none trick isn't working for whatever reason. So we'd have to figure out how to make that work. I wonder if I can't imagine it's just like a typo or something. Not sure what that happens to be, but it's there. I can figure it out with some more troubleshooting, I'm sure. Hunt around online or on the Linux community or in the Email Geek Slack channel to figure that one out. But yeah, that's really most of what you need to know about dark mode for email is understanding those different levels of support. So you have kind of the default view, which will just be what your light version of whatever you coded in the email is what will be displayed for most email clients, even when people have dark mode set in their preferences. The next up from that is this kind of partial invert, where they're making an attempt to make your email readable in dark mode, but you don't have any real control over what it looks like. And then the full level support beyond that is giving you all the custom CSS, all that control using this prefers color scheme, media query, and overriding those CSS styles for those dark mode settings. And those are the basic mechanics. It kind of gets adjusted for each email campaign about what you're targeting, what you want to override, what those styles actually look like. But that's really the mechanics behind it all. So it's not as like complicated as I feel like a lot of people make it out to be. It's relatively straightforward. It's just kind of understanding that dark mode doesn't work everywhere. This code doesn't work everywhere, which should be, you know, pretty easy to understand if you've been in email for a long time or even for a short time. Like it's email clients are a finicky bunch. There's lots of bugs. There's all kinds of different levels of support for um, different HTML and CSS, and that's really what email design development is all about: is understanding what works where and getting that into your code, into your design to make sure that your emails work across all those different email clients. I'm kind of curious if again, I've mentioned this resource a bunch of times, but it's caniemail.com. I'm curious to see if what the feature support is here for. I guess it would be prefers color scheme, pops up, which is awesome. So it looks about like 51% support for email clients, popular email clients. Again, Apple Mail is great about it. Outlook on Mac is good about it, which makes sense because it's using the same rendering engine as the Apple Mail client for all intents and purposes, so it'll work there. But you can see it's pretty hit or miss for the rest of these email clients. So SFR and Orange, two email service providers on the web, have some support for it, but not others. So just kind of understanding that it's not going to work everywhere, um, but you make it work where it can work, and it's just providing that better experience for people, um, where it can be supported. So that's about all I have for today's live stream. If there are any kind of last minute questions, uh, dump them into the chat here. I'm going to switch back to my lovely face here, so you can see me, everybody. If there aren't any questions, awesome. We will wrap up. I'm getting hungry, so I'm going to get some lunch. Hopefully, this will, give you the tools you need to um, make better dark mode experiences for your email subscribers. There are those two links again that I think are probably the best resources out there for dark mode in email design. The blog post from Alice Lee, which we try to keep updated, and then the Ultimate Guide to Dark Mode Email ebook that we released recently, which is just at limbus.com/resources. You can find it there. All kinds of great stuff there: webinars, ebooks, white papers, toolkits. We have email templates you can use, all kinds of stuff on the resources page for Litmus. So definitely worth checking out and leveling up your skills when it comes to email design, development, strategy, copywriting, analytics, all that kind of stuff. So I appreciate everybody hopping on. I'm glad it looks like this was helpful for a bunch of you, which makes my day. If I do nothing else today, I've helped a handful of people, learn a little bit more about dark mode and email. So that's awesome. Hopefully that'll, filter down to their subscribers and make their lives a little bit better when they're viewing their emails in dark mode versions. So again, if anybody has any questions, pop them into the comments in YouTube. I'll try to keep an eye on that. You can always email the Litmus team at hello@limbus.com. We're at Litmus app on Twitter. And if you haven't already, again, subscribe to the YouTube channel. We're going to keep doing these every month, these practical sessions. It's been live coding so far, but that's not to say that this won't always be live coding. We could do some visual design stuff, how to write an analytics report or run an A/B test, something like that. I'm looking into getting some other folks on here too, so it's not just me, and we can talk through some good practical stuff for email marketers and designers and developers. And I guess we will see you back here next month, second Friday of the month, which I don't know what date that is right now, but we'll schedule it soon. And so subscribe, you'll get the updates. And yeah, thanks everybody for joining me, and I will see you next time. Cheers.